The broadcast is live. We are live, gang. Come on in, one and all. This historic live stream Friday. I am Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. You smack that thing, right? Smack that bell and subscribe button. This is our first live stream on Rumble, concurrently on YouTube and Rumble. So a huge welcome to our brand new and growing Rumble audience. You guys are rocking and rolling. God bless each and every one of you. Super chats are up. Send me your questions. I'll answer them in due course. Who would have ever imagined just days ago that we would all be waking up this very morning, this beautiful spring morning, more united than we have ever been? The American people, as of today, are more united than we have ever been as a people. I've got the receipts to show you on that. Who would have ever imagined that we would wake up to such an astonishing display of unity around a single presidential candidate? Who would have imagined just days ago waking up to all of these Republican second-tier candidates, declared and undeclared, from DeSantis to Haley to Ramaswamy, all officially rallying around the one man who has beaten the Democrats at the highest level of office, the first Republican to get over 300 electoral votes in 30 years, and is poised to do it again, which is precisely why the establishment, our ruling elite, want to so desperately get rid of him. And who would have thought that desperation, that wicked, woke, pathetic desperation, that Wile E. Coyote desperation would cause the Democratic Party to politically commit suicide and officially begin their journey on the way of the Whigs and the Dixiecrats towards political extinction. What an amazing day we are waking up to. We are more united than ever before. Trump is surging in popularity like never before. And today marks the beginning of the end of the Democratic Party as a viable political force in our nation. And I'm just getting warmed up. We have got much more on this live stream Friday. Remember, super chats are up, so send me your questions. And before we launch, let's keep the lights on here and support one of the most endearing patriots of our day. And that, of course, is the one and only Mike Lindell. Mike has absolutely outdone himself with a new fabric temperature regulating technology that keeps you comfortable all throughout the night. You're going to absolutely love it. And you get the same amazing savings as always if you use code Turley. So a classic My Pillow is normally just $69.98, but if you use promo code Turley, you're going to get that same classic My Pillow for just $19.98. And that applies to over 200 products in their catalog. So don't wait, gang. Click on that link below. Give the gift of comfort and warmth to yourself and your loved ones. Support one of America's most amazing patriots and get the best savings ever. Click on that link below right now. All right, so let's start with the obvious. All right, let's put it all in perspective. One of my favorite sayings from Winston Churchill is this: nothing in life is more exhilarating than to be shot at without effect. Nothing in life is more exhilarating than to be shot at without effect. All of this sound and fury from the wicked woke left, and I know I'm being redundant there, all of it is for naught. All of it. This is widely admitted, even among leftists. Even if everything they could ever hope for in indictment came true, none of it, literally none of it, would matter a whit for 2024. First and foremost, the case is most likely not even going to be prosecuted anytime before 2024 presidential election. That's assuming that it even survives the court challenges. Alan Dershowitz is already predicting this is going to be thrown out on statute of limitations grounds. The statute of limitations on the charge of falsifying business records expired 5 years ago for Trump. Second worst case scenario, even if Trump were tried and convicted before the election, found guilty on all of these counts, that wouldn't stop him from running, that wouldn't stop him from winning, and that wouldn't stop him from taking office. And that's because, as my namesake, Jonathan Turley, the George Washington University legal professor and Fox News legal analyst, as he's pointed out, and many others, Judge Napolitano and so forth, the Constitution limits qualification for the presidency to only 3 things. You have to be at least 35, you got to be a natural-born citizen, and you have to be a U.S. resident for the last 14 years, for at least 14 years. That's it. You could be a convict and still serve. And that's because, according to our founding fathers, the American people decide who the president is, not lawyers, not the judiciary system, not deep state bureaucrats, the American people, and the American people alone. So these 2 inconvenient truths alone underscore the utter and total futility of this absurdity. There's literally no point to what they're trying to do. Again, it smacks of utter and complete and total desperation. I mean, think about it. Their president, their senile, incompetent, incontinent president who consistently has trouble walking up flights of stairs, let alone enunciating sentences. Their sorry excuse for a president is currently polling in the 30s. And in the wings awaits a vice president, a cackling vice president, who's even more of a joke than he is. The world of American influence over the globe is unraveling right before our eyes under the leadership of this bumbling administration like never before. And more people are recognizing it, hence his imploding poll numbers. This smacks of utter desperation. And as we all know, acts of desperation are by definition desperate. They often end up backfiring. As I pointed out in yesterday's video, Trump has been surging in popularity as a result of this. In fact, Trump has so politically benefited from this that there were those out there who actually accused him of making all of this indictment stuff up as a fundraising gamut. There were those in the DeSantis crowd that were out there this week accusing Trump of fabricating a marketing ploy, a brilliant one at that. That's how much Trump has been politically benefiting this week from all of this. Trump is now, as we speak, Trump is now firmly in command of the nomination. No one can even come close. DeSantis is a distant second place. The latest Fox poll, which is significant given how anti-Trump Rupert Murdoch is, they now have Trump absolutely breaking away from the pack. He's leading the growing Republican field by an astonishing 30 points. 30 freaking points. He's gone above the 50% support mark in an already crowded field. But this is beyond anything we saw in 2016. The irony of ironies here is that this indictment has placed Trump in his bang zone. This is where Trump loves to be. He's at the center of the world. He's the center of attention. All the other candidates for 2024, including Joe Biden, are all just being brushed to the side as onlookers. Trump is sucking out all the political oxygen from the room. And to make it even sweeter, what is he facing off with? What is the world seeing as Trump's opponent with this indictment? His opponent is now a rigged judicial system, a justice system that 8 in 10 voters in the nation believe is rigged against him. A recent survey by Trafalgar, the poll, found that 79% of likely voters, I'll say that again, 79%, that's 8 out of 10, believe we live in a two-tier justice system that deliberately protects political insiders at the expense of ordinary Americans. Gallup just found recently that a fifth of Americans now view the government, a fifth, 20%, view the government as the number one greatest threat facing the nation today, even more than inflation. In a recent Rasmussen poll, 53% of likely voters agreed with the statement that the FBI acts like Biden's Gestapo. And what we have to realize here is that over the last 24 hours, all those fears, all those concerns, all that legitimate resentment has just completely and totally consolidated around one man. So is it any wonder that Trump's polls have been going up? Is it any wonder now that more and more people see Trump as the candidate to stand up against this absurdly corrupt establishment? Is it any wonder that more people than ever see Trump as the very candidate that the crooked establishment most fears, which is precisely why they're persecuting it? Trump is exactly where a populist candidate wants to be, fighting the establishment. Dick Morris is already saying he's got the nomination virtually wrapped up, and he has the filthy Soros-funded Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg to thank for it. So all of this, of course, then begs the question, why on earth are the dolt Democrats doing this? Why are the Democrats crossing this line and indicting Trump on such flimsy and pathetic charges? Well, at one level, they frankly got nothing else. Robert Barnes was talking about this on his live stream last night. I mean, the Georgia election interference case looks like it collapsed under the weight of the nuttiness of the juror that was making those rounds, those talk show rounds, where even the legacy media, the Marxist media types were like, dude, you're freaking nuts. I mean, even they thought this girl was nuts. So that's going nowhere. The DC case against Trump isn't going anywhere. No J6 defendants were willing to flip on Trump and like Bannon or someone and said, oh yeah, no, I know. He told me this was all a coordinated effort to an insurrection to overturn the election. The Mar-a-Lago raid isn't going anywhere because, of course, of the constitutional precedents that the president of the United States can, in fact, declassify anything he wants. And the discovery of classified documents all over Biden's garage, of course, completely undermined the FBI raid at Trump's home. So it looks like, at least at this point, this sleazy Manhattan DA's case, which he previously turned down, as did his predecessor, as did federal investigators, this is all they had. But I will tell you, there is a much deeper level that's operating here. Why are they doing this? Why are they resorting to weaponizing the legal system and arresting President Trump? I think the answer is going to blow your mind, and it's actually going to encourage you. But first, gang, as we together free ourselves in this corrupt, rigged system, one of the very best and timeless ways for us to do that is getting back into gold. You guys know what I'm talking about. As more and more nations around the world are going back to the gold standard, it's happening. Now is the time for patriots to return to the timeless value of gold and silver for this rising new age we are living in. And that's where our good friends over at Goldco come in. Click on that link below and learn the 3 simple steps you can take right now to protect your savings with gold and silver. In fact, Goldco are patriots just like us, gang. They want you to succeed in your investment so much, they're offering up to $10,000 in free silver while supplies last. So don't wait. Click on that link below or visit my special website, turleytalkslikesgold.com. What we have to understand from their vantage point, from the vantage point of the permanent political class made up of the Democrats and the rhinos, from the vantage point of our ruling elite, they are absolutely scared to death of us. You've got to get that. If you think this through, and it's very interesting, I was listening to a leftist professor point this out. So a populist leftist. So the populist right and populist left, in many respects, are beginning to forge a massive, utterly massive coalition to overturn the permanent political class. That's what's happening underneath the surface, behind the scenes, as it were. But even he was noticing that in many respects, there has simply never been a time, ever, in our nation's history when we, the people, have been more united. Virtually every study out there, for example, every study out there shows that racism has plummeted in our nation. In 1950, 90% of the public was opposed to interracial marriage. Today, 90% of the public is all for it. In virtually every racial indicator, would you work for somebody of a different ethnicity? Would you live next to somebody of a different ethnicity? Blah, 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 blah. You take these basic racist indicators, as they're calling, every single one has plummeted over the last 40, 50 years. And yet our permanent political class has never been more obsessed with racism and racist attitudes among us. I've read that the American people today are more anti-war than we've ever been, even more than during the height of the Vietnam era. And yet our permanent political class is utterly obsessed with going to war. War with Russia, war with China over Taiwan, war with Iran. We, the people, are more united than we've ever been before. United against the goals of our ruling elite. And so the irony is that our unprecedented unity as a people is provoking a massive division, a division between the people and the permanent political class. In fact, I heard one scholar observe that in many respects, our nation right now, the United States of America, politically speaking, may indeed be more divided than any other nation on earth. The gap between the people and the ruling elite, the gap between our values, interests, and concerns versus their values, interests, and concerns may indeed be wider here than anywhere else on the planet. A recent Gallup survey found that trust in our nation's fundamental institutions, from the federal government to our legacy news media to law enforcement to elections, is at an all-time low. It's one of the lowest for any nation in the world. China's population is infinitely more confident and trusting in their government and their institutions than we are. Let that hit you. And so our ruling elite, led by the Democrats and emboldened by feckless, cowardly rhinos, they're doing everything they possibly can to divide us. And up until now, the primary way they've been doing that is through what scholars call a politics of resentment, or more simply, resentment politics. And you've seen it all, right? The way they use race, the way they use the environment, the way they used the vaccines, the impeachments, the J6 security breaches, the J6 kangaroo committee, Biden's blood red speech that deliberately sought to divide the American people. And of course, the ultimate expression of this politics of resentment was the legacy media's recent Nashville transphobic Christians had it coming propaganda tour that so grossed all of us out this week. And with all of that, with all of those efforts to divide this growing unity of the people versus the political class, with all those efforts, we are still more united than we have ever been as a people, growing more united and growing more distrustful of our ruling elite. And so, the ruling class, seeing that their deliberate infliction of resentment politics onto an increasingly united public isn't working, they've now resorted to what all desperate tyrannical regimes resort to. They've resorted to a politics of retribution. What happened last night from that Manhattan DA's office, that clown show of a justice system, what happened last night is that our ruling elite moved from a politics of resentment to a politics of retribution, where they are now actively arresting representatives of this growing unified distrust of our ruling elite. In other words, if they can't divide us, then they're going to start detaining us. Now, of course, in many respects, this really did start with the J6 protesters who are still locked up, mostly, and at an individual level with Julian Assange. Now you understand what was really happening with Julian Assange. But now, for the first time in our nation's history, now that politics of retribution has extended to the arrest of a former president and the leader of the opposition party. And as a result, I would argue, the Democrats just committed political suicide. They just guaranteed their own defeat. They just crossed a line, a Rubicon, that every single one of our political predecessors, our forefathers, knew you were never to cross. Democrats and Republicans have always been adversaries. We've always despised each other. But you stop short of indicting each other. You stop short of arresting and raiding the homes of your political opponents. The moment you start arresting your political opponents, most particularly a former president and the presumed nominee for the upcoming election, you in effect unleash the politics of retribution. You've triggered World War III, politically speaking. You've launched the first strike in mutually assured destruction. That's what the Democrats have unleashed. And that's what's about to backfire on them beyond their wildest nightmares. It may not happen with this current crop of feckless Mitch McConnells, but it's going to happen. I don't know how many of you saw the press release from the New York Young Republicans Club right after the indictment was announced. I think it captures precisely these dynamics we've been talking about. I think it summarizes everything I've been talking about perfectly. This is what I'll just read. It's about half of it, but it's worth every word. Today, our nation careens toward tyranny at an unprecedented pace. An impudent cabal of radical figures abandons all propriety in their dogged attacks on President Donald J. Trump. We have taken a decisive step away from the values that define our national character. Every utterance that has escaped these monsters' lips since President Trump first came down the escalator has built toward this moment. Each falsehood, each misdirection, each deliberate misportrayal found its culmination in Alvin Bragg's desperate action today. Radical leftist interests, beholden to an elite, internationalist, cabal, have taken the unprecedented step of indicting President Donald J. Trump, the leading candidate for the 2024 presidential election. President Trump embodies the American people, our psyche, our ID to superego, as does no other figure. His soul is totally bonded with our core values and emotions, and he is our total and indisputable champion. This tremendous connection threatens the established order. And here's how they end it. President Trump assured us that he was our retribution. Now we must return the rejoinder. Our victory will be the joint vindication that our great President Donald J. Trump and our American people both deserve. This is now total war. In trying to get rid of the one man that they see as the leader of the single greatest existential threat facing the globalist establishment today, the Democrats have inadvertently awakened an army of tens of millions whose ultimate goal from this day forward is nothing less than the shattering of the Democratic Party. Politically, of course, politically, no violence here. I'm not woke. We're not woke here, so we don't do that. But politically speaking, we will accept nothing less from this day forward than the complete obliteration of the Democratic Party as a viable governing force at any level, federal, state, and local, anywhere within the borders of this nation. They can no longer be trusted with an ounce of power. And from this point forward, those tens of millions will mobilize in such a way that there cannot possibly be a viable Republican presidential nominee whose ultimate goal is not the total annihilation of the Democratic Party as a viable political force. The Democrats are going to go the way of the Whigs. We will settle for nothing less. They crossed the line. Now, there's no going back. Over to you guys. Over to you. Let's see what you guys have for me. Our moderator, Josh, is putting everything together for us. Make sure to click on that link below as he assembles the questions here, and check out our good friends over at Home Title Lock. If you don't know, the deed to your home is online. And that means it's more vulnerable and valuable than you can imagine. I interviewed Matt Cox, who was once on the FBI's most wanted list for stealing home deeds. And what he did is he took out massive loans based on the equity and then stuck the owners with the bill. And it's more common than you can imagine. But that's where our good friends over at Home Title Lock come in. Gang, they're amazing. Home Title Lock gives you the peace of mind that the deed to your home is absolutely and completely protected. Click on that link below right now. Use promo code Turley Talks, and then all you have to do is enter your address for your no obligation home title scan to see if you've already been a victim of deed theft. That's $100 value, absolutely totally free when you use my promo code Turley Talks. Gang, don't wait for the worst to happen only to regret that you didn't do something about it when you could. Click on that link below right now and secure your home today. All right, gang. Let's see, Josh, how do we do it? So Let's see. I've got Stephen Connors. I fear they will manufacture evidence against him, like the Steele dossier. Again, they may, Stephen. They may. Whether that'll survive the appeals process, I doubt. Number one. Number two, it won't happen until after the 2024 election. And even if they found him guilty, he can still run and still win and still serve. So that's what I mean. All of this is for naught. It's very bizarre. Next. And good seeing you, Stephen. Brooks Kelly, do you think it's time to impeach Biden using the indictment as a basis? Seems fitting. So it was just a phone call with Trump. And yes, it was a perfect call. Yeah, Brooks, I mean, all bets are off now since we're now in the era of retribution. All bets are off. So the Republicans can no longer be the catch-up party where it's always, you notice it's always the Democrats who want to stack the courts and put on 4 more judges. It's always the Democrats who want to add 5 more states, Puerto Rico and the like. It's always the Democrats who want to get rid of the Electoral College. It's always the Democrats who are pushing the envelope. Why they so feared Trump is for the first time we actually had a Republican who came in and pushed the envelope in the opposite direction. Let's build a wall and secure our border and start enforcing our immigration laws. Let's bring back manufacturing and industry like no Republican candidate had ever advocated and effected beforehand, so as to reignite our energy independence and our manufacturing independence. Let's really celebrate our customs, cultures, and traditions by overturning Roe v. Wade with solid pro-life judges. I mean, he was an existential threat to the Democrats. So we have to go back to that. We have to go back to playing offense, and we have to be throwing everything at them, whether that's impeachments, whether that's indictment. We have to overwhelm this party and shatter it as a political force in this nation. And again, I would say at all levels. So that's, we're going to have to even start talking about at municipal levels. So very good question. Next, BR17. Thank you, sir. Hi, Steve. Hi, Stev. I am Norwegian now. If birth rates for conservatives outproduce the left, but schools indoctrinate, K to college with kids identifying as LGBT at 40%, when the left capture the kids long term? Great question. And that's absolutely legit. What we're seeing is the largest demographic advantage is from the so-called far right. That's the term du jour that everybody uses for them now. They're just talking about us, right? But by far right, they basically say we're outside the center left, center right, globalist mainstream. We're nationalist, populist, traditionalists. We believe in literally a fundamentally different paradigm for governance and for culture. So what we're finding in the studies is that the more, quote, far right you are, the more kids you have. And the more those kids are retaining their conservatism into adulthood. That's part of the studies. If all the studies were, and in fairness, Eric Kaufman's original study in 2013, The Religious Shall Inherit the Earth, in fairness, he did not give this data. The data of retention among children. All the data that he focused on was how religious conservatives had this absolutely enormous fertility advantage over the secular liberals who are disappearing. They're dying. They're going the way of the dodo bird. There's no way. There's no demographer worth their salt that doesn't see that. Okay. So in fairness, that opened up this very legitimate counter, which is, okay, that's fine. They're having lots and lots of kids, but then you send them over to these K to 12 or these liberal colleges, and then they just get all messed up. The data is in now on retention. How many of these kids and these families retain that conservatism into adulthood? The wonderful news is that the more conservative, the more they retain. That's the pattern. The more conservative, the more they retain. So the what do you want to call it? The type of this, I can't find a better word. The type for this is the Amish. So the Amish is sort of like the ultimate now like super traditionalist conservative, lots of kids, average, some Amish sects have an average of 7 kids, things like that. What we found, and Eric Kaufman, by the way, has been on top of this as well, because I think he recognized it was a lacuna in his study. What we found is that the retention rates have actually been going up. They were around 70% about 30 years ago. And remember, the Amish double every 20 years because of fertility. They were about 70% retention rate. 70% of their kids held on to their conservatism into adulthood. It became Amish. 30% left through the Rumspringa. They ended up leaving. What we find today is it's around 85% retention. So the more woke and wacky the world is getting, the more conservative kids are retaining their conservatism into adulthood. And what we're finding is with, well, again, the studies call them evangelicals, or they'll call them born again Christians, or they'll call them different, or fundamentalists. They'll call them different terms. But we're finding is they're demonstrating the same retention rates, around 70 to 85%. Now, again, I know we're losing a lot of kids, but those are primarily milquetoast families. This also, you have to take into consideration the 18 to 26-year-old time period. We have studies that show that 20-year-olds are significantly more liberal than 18-year-olds. So this goes to your thesis. They end up going to a liberal college or state school or whatever. They get all wacky. But by the time they're 26-year-olds are far more conservative than 18-year-olds. They come back. So these things aren't static, right? Just because young people in their 20s think one way doesn't mean that when they're 40, they think another way. We have studies that show that on average, this is a British study, on average, we get more conservative by 1% every year we age. So that's the other problem with this, when you just think, oh, the kids have got screwed up. Yeah, a lot get screwed up, but a lot come back. That's the other side of it. And the other good news is that one of the reasons why the so-called far right keeps so many kids in place is keeps their conservatism, is they build parallel structures. So homeschooling is up, what is it now, 700% in some areas of the country ever since COVID. Classical Christian education that I was involved in 1994, there were 10 classical Christian schools that focus on the great books and Latin and theology and the like. Today, there are over 700. So it's absolutely exploding. Honors college programs, again, there were only about a dozen about 10 years ago or so. Today, there are over 1,000. So again, this is all part of the retraditionalization. We're all going back. This is good stuff. So I hear you. Excellent. And again, it just underscores how we have to now take the parallel economy that is booming internationally now. We may even have to stop calling it the parallel economy with BRICS and with SCO and all these other economic alliances that are going around the world. They're approaching like 60% of the world's population. It's now us. It's now the Western globalist powers that are the fringe economy. So increasingly, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. That's the trends. Excellent. What do we got next? Millord, Grand Darth, Starweaver, MAGA needs to be its own party. Yeah, so that's one of the things that may end up happening if the Republicans don't respond the way they're going to be expected by this new grassroots that expect nothing less than a total shattering of the Democratic Party as a viable political force. Then we'll form our own party. There's no way around it. And the Republicans will go the way of the dodo. David Suits, this reminds me of what they did to Jesus Christ before they put him on the cross. Isn't that fascinating? It is an amazing thing if you think it through. What happens when you deny truth? Because you have Pilate say, I see nothing wrong with this man. Nothing he's done is worthy of any major punishment. And then several lines later, all right, crucify him, go kill him, go execute him. And what connects those? What connects that disjunction is his statement in John, is it 18, of what is truth? When Christ says, I came to witness to the truth, and those who are on the side of truth listen to me. And Pilate says, what is it? Quies veritas? What is truth? What is truth? So if you don't believe in truth, you can hold two contradictory views at the same time. Boy, does that not describe our society, which means it's imploding, right? But you can hold two contradictory views at the same time. This man is innocent, go execute him. So, and yes, we are a society that's embracing absurdity, which is technically what's known as a contradiction. Which cannot possibly be true. All you have to do is argue with me, and you've proved my point. You're taking an opposite position to my position, right? Two contradictory views can't both be true at the same time, the same relationship. Aristotle always pointed that out. And so when you start embracing a contradictory reality as necessary for all citizens to bend the knee to, your society is imploding. It will die of its own inherent futility. It sows the seeds of its own demise. And that's what my channel tries to do. So make sure you smack that bell and subscribe button. Why I'm so optimistic is we together weekly analyze the inherent futility sowed in liberalism. Liberalism is a walking contradiction. It will implode itself. We can sit back and just watch. The problem is how much damage do they do in the meantime. And that's what we're trying to weather this storm. Next, Mitchell. Do you think the Dems are doing this just so they could beat Trump in the general election because he will be easier to hate? That's what they're hoping. That's what they're hoping. They're hoping that this is going to weaken Trump. They're hoping this is the blood red Biden speech, dark Biden on steroids. And this is going to make Trump go unhinged, and it's going to make more and more people hate him. Again, I think it fails to recognize we're more united as a people than we've ever been against the permanent political class. And I think that unity just got put on steroids today, or last night, technically. OJ's Trump is a distraction from the Christians. Okay. Contradiction. Exhibit A. Maria Fotopoulos, we love you and count on you for accurate reporting. God bless you, Maria. Thank you. Evcharistopoli. Put it back. What happened? I was Josh, our moderator. Josh, that's a compliment. We got to keep this pasted for a long time. I got to milk this. Let's see. However, an apology is owed by you. Oh, no, never mind. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. You messed up last night. You strongly hinted that Trump would not be indicted. No, I did not. Hold on. And minutes later, he was. Okay. All right. No, last night I said he was not going to be indicted over the next month because we were told that the jury was breaking for the next month and coming back at the end of April. So it was, no question. I was wrong that when I said Trump, we don't have to worry about Trump being indicted for the next month. That's what I said. Fully. Yep. They tricked us. No problem. They tricked us. I will easily, but no, I've always said, I think in the end, he's going to get indicted. The pressure to indict was too powerful. I've said, you can look at all my videos. I've never once said he's not getting indicted at all. All right. So that's, and even if this fizzled out, the Georgia case or the DC cases would kick in. So no, indictment was inevitable. The question now is, how are Republicans going to rally the people, a more united people than ever, around Trump? China's population doesn't have a choice to dissent. And to be honest, I think the BRICS, it's an authoritarian SWIFT. They're all Khazarian mafia, Trump too. Yeah, I hear you, Wololos. Are you in Poland? I have a sense you're coming from Poland. Because I see where you're coming from with that. But so what? That's where it's going. That's where the world is going. It's organic. You can kick against the goads all you want. China's population does have a choice to dissent. It is not that bad. When they are asked various poll numbers, there are plenty of anti-government answers. We have plenty of poll. Ipsos in particular shows that. But the Chinese population is very confident right now because they're getting very rich. They're doing very well. And so they're in a very optimistic, it's morning in China kind of life that they're living. It's a massive civilization, 1.4 billion people. Let that hit you. The 0.4 is bigger than the United States population. We're 320, 330 million. That 0.4 is bigger than our entire nation's population. So it is this massive civilization that feels like they're returning back to the glories of Emperor China, Confucian China, which in many respects they are. And then BRICS, yeah, say whatever you want about BRICS being authoritarian and so this is democracy versus tyranny. Or freedom versus tyranny, democracy versus authoritarianism is a 1980s and 90s or 20th century, post World War II framework that doesn't make sense of the world anymore. So that's why I think just Ted Cruz's language and, even to a certain extent, DeSantis' language or neocons' language or Biden's language just seems like it's from a different era. It made sense with Reagan. It doesn't make sense today in a growing multipolar world. We are no longer politically defined. We are now increasingly culturally defined. We're no longer ideologically defined. We're now identity defined. It's learning to come to terms with that world and make sense of that world. That's our challenge. That's what I think. Next. Black Wolf Incorporated. In 2016, President Trump could not get an ounce of support from me. In 2020, I am proud to yell, I voted for Trump. Now for 2024, I have another black man with a MAGA cap on. God bless you, my friend. Another black man. Well, I mean, you are part, my friend, my brother, you are part of the growing demographic movement, along with Latinos, of course, married women, rural white women, rural white workers, people who have been traditionally associated as voting with the Democratic Party are now moving en masse to not so much the Republican Party, but a Trumpian party, a truly People's Party or Patriot Party. And it is an honor to be fighting right alongside with you, sir. Next. Muffwaggle, good morning, Dr. Steve. Sad day in America. In one sense, yes. Yes, in one sense. I'm not black pilling. I saw plenty of black pilling last night, and we do that best. Conservatives black pill for good reason. The modern world by definition is liberal. The modern world hates custom, culture, tradition, boundary, nation, border. It hates religion. It hates it. It is anti-religious. It's anti-nationalist. It's anti-traditionalist. So every historical moment is marked by something progressive, by some first that's always left-wing liberal. All right. We live under that world. So it's easy to be black-pilled, but that world is shattering. That world is dying. We are going from a modern world to a postmodern world where that progressive, liberal, woke, globalist experiment is unraveling. Be joyous. Now it's going to be, the new world's going to have its own challenges, no question, but be joyous in that. How do we know it's unraveling? Well, not just the studies and so forth, but look at how desperate they're getting. Now they're starting to arrest us. That's how bad it is. So for them. So sad day in America. Yes. Right. We're just slowly turning into a banana republic. Happy Friday. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have just read the whole thing. So you're black-pilled, Muffwaggle. I hope I helped. All I can say is I hope I helped. Black pill. Remember the Stockdale principle. Who remembers the Stockdale principle? It's also known as the Stockdale paradox. Put it in the chat if you know it. Summarize it in your own way. You can probably do it better than I can. It's named after Admiral James Stockdale. He was the single most decorated, highest ranking POW during the Vietnam War. I believe he was a prisoner of war for 7 years. He was repeatedly tortured. And then when released, along with his men, he was asked, how did you do it? How did you survive? because obviously a lot of your boys didn't. And he said two kinds of people died in that pit. One was the perpetual optimist, the naive optimist, right? Because the naive optimist always thought, okay, we'll be out by Christmas. Then Christmas comes and we're not. All right, well, we'll be out by Easter. Comes and goes. We'll be out by summer. Comes and goes. Oh, we'll be out by fall. Comes and goes. We'll be out by Thanksgiving. I know it will be. It comes and goes. Oh, we'll be out by Christmas. And they died of a broken heart. But he said there was another group guaranteed didn't make it. They all died. And that was the black-pilled pessimists. Hear me. The black-pilled pessimists didn't make it. They crawled in the corner. They named their rat. They curled up and they died. They withered away. How did you survive? You have to have, number one, an absolute sense, a very realistic, sober, ain't kidding nobody sense of the seriousness of the situation that you're in. And number two, you never lose hope that you will prevail. This is the Stockdale principle is being used in business. It's being used in sports competition, everything. You have got to have an absolutely realistic sense of the dire situation that you are in. And you can never, ever lose hope that you indeed will prevail. It is an optimistic realism. And that's what you're getting on this channel. And that's what you've got to have if we're going to beat the shit out of these Democrats. But if you're going to wallow up in the corner and say all is lost, the sky is falling, we're in a banana republic, it's all hopeless. If you're going to do that, you're dying and you're taking people with you. All right? So there you go. There's my pep talk. Go. Next. Coach Steve, why do you present Putin and Joe? Oh, God. Oh, Steve. Or Coach, sorry. So you think I present Putin and Xi with white hats? All right. So here we go. The good guys in the back. Steve, why do you present Putin and Xi as good guys just because they are anti-globalists? Would you rather live under the boot of the CCP as they continue to control every aspect of the U.S. and the CCP? Look, forgive me for being a little discouraged here, because I think the discourage is part for me in terms of my messaging, in the sense that I get frustrated and I feel like I am not doing well in trying to communicate this new world, that the civilizationalist world that's rising. The very fact that you say, would I rather live under the CCP, to me shows how much you universalize our values. I love living here mostly. I love living here because of the freedoms that I have. But the days of globalizing those freedoms and judging other civilizations and other nations as inferior if they don't have our form of government that looks pretty sick right now is itself dead. You can't do that. Worked in the 20th century when it was a bilateral, or I should say a bipolar world between two major political poles, one that represented tyranny and oppression, that everybody given the chance wanted to leave, versus one that provided freedom and opportunity and liberty, that everybody wanted to go. Last I looked, that ain't happening no more in Russia and China. Sorry. I've gone to, I can't even count the amount of Chinese students that I've either gone to school with or that I have taught that happily returned back to China. They didn't stay here. They didn't defect. Nobody's talking that way, as it were. Nobody's talking, they're making so much money. They're exploding as an economy and as a culture. It's the same with Russia. They like it. Putin has an 80% approval rating. Xi has a massively high approval rating. The polls demonstrate. They have a. Does that make them good guys? No. What it does is it should humble us from thinking that our way of life that we have been imposing on the rest of the world for the last 30 years since the fall of the Soviet Union is the only way and the only legitimate standard of politics for the world. You're continuing to see the world through the lens of politics. That's globalist. That's liberal. That's the liberal international order. The liberal international order judges where nations are on the civilized scale by your politics. And if you have the politics that the State Department wants you to have, they don't care if your nation is imploding, i.e. Sri Lanka. They don't care. Just as long as you have they don't even care if you have a Democratic republic, i.e. 2014 Maidan Revolution, Ukraine. They overthrew the State Department, according to the BBC and its transcript. The State Department overthrew a duly elected Ukrainian government by the people because it was pro-Russian and put in a puppet government that was pro-US. So come on, man. We're not a politically organized world anymore. What are we? You know this. We're becoming more and more a culturally organized world, a civilizationally organized world, and the politics flows from the culture. We don't get to run around and tell nations how to do their politics anymore. Those days are over. I get it during the Soviet era, but those days are over, dude. They're over. And that's when I'm trying to show that the world that operated according to politics is a liberal international order with the WEF and the bullies in Brussels and the dolts in DC basically dictating to the world how they could live. Russia transgressed those rules. They threw everything they had in terms of sanctions and penalties short of war. And Russia told them to Russia flipped them off and said, ha, we've been preparing for this for 10 years, and we are already entering into another world. Your sanctions, your magic is powerless here. And that, my friend, sorry, whether we like it or not, that is the new conservative age that is rising. A civilizationalist, traditionalist, religious age. And it may not have the politics you like, but that's because the age that was defined by politics is dying. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. I'm still perhaps trying to find better ways of explaining that. But the fact that you're saying that I'm running around going, yay, Putin, yay, Xi, for their politics misses the entire point. You're missing the fact that I see them as representatives of cultures and civilizations that are traditionalist and that are highly conservative and that are rising up and pushing back against woke leftist Westernism. That's what I see. So there you go. All right, next. Fear not, POTUS safe. This is Lisa. Fear not, POTUS safe. Precedent set, part of the plan. All right. Next. Reaper King. I feel like the left might try to give him the Kennedy treatment when he wins. Well, again, that's a good point. That is clearly the politics of retribution. No question. Dark Galaxy, do you think that Trump, along with the American people, will create a rebellion against the radical left and the Democrats? We will see. That's what I mean. I think what is amassing here long term, the trajectory, what's amassing here is a more united people against the ruling class than ever. We are a more united people divided from the ruling class than ever. And all we need is somebody to tap into that, unite it, and it's over. This thing overturns overnight, more or less. Again, just ask the Berlin Wall. Just ask the Soviet Union. Governments fall fast when they fall, or government structures, I should say, fall fast when they fall. Next, Anthony. And the Dems build a better America and get America working again, repair American manufacturing, repair America's ghost towns, make us great again. Absolutely. J.D. Vance is on the forefront of that. Globalism has absolutely ravaged rural America through what's known as a global division of labor. And that's where globalist, liberal, remember, we're liberal politically, economically, and culturally, right? So we're liberal in our politics, which I've just had to deal with. Some people want to continue to impose liberal politics if it just happens to have conservatives running it. But we're liberal in our culture because we're woke, and we're liberal in our economics. And liberal economics is all about maximizing margins, so as to keep wages low and returns high, so as to maximize the shares on the S&P 500 and Wall Street. That makes the donor class happy, which brings more money to the politicians' pockets. And so what do the politicians do? They enact what's called a global division of labor, where they ship out manufacturing and industry to the global south, the so-called third world, all the while reamassing finance and capital in our cosmopolitan urban areas, leaving rural folk highly unemployed. So that's why you had the Yellow Vest uprising in France a couple of years back, because these were rural folk in France. I mean, again, it's happening in the United States, it's happening throughout Europe. And we have single-handedly made China the single greatest manufacturing power on the planet. And by virtue of this, thank you, liberal economists. But what happened with the Yellow Vests is these were rural folk who had to commute an hour and a half by car into the cities to work, because there was no work where they lived, but they couldn't live where there was work because of with all the finance and capital amassing around cities. It's gentrified the cities and raised the real estate prices through the roof, make it totally unaffordable. So they couldn't work where they live, and they couldn't live where there's work. So they had to commute an hour and a half each way to their job. And then Macron comes in and slaps a fuel tax on them in the name of green energy and gratification. And they just blew up. They exploded. So absolutely, you're 100% right. And Donald Trump is the only president that we have had that has demonstrably brought manufacturing back to the United States and made us energy independent. Next, Black Wolf. What biblical text would you use to reference in this matter? This feels like Joseph being falsely imprisoned due to Pharaoh's wife lying. That's a good one. That's a good one. Or what we see with Christ's trial. Those are good. False witness, bearing false witness would be relevant here as well. The prophets come back, just again as a general principle. The prophets of weaponized legalism, of using the law to benefit the privileged and the wealthy. That's a huge thing as well. Next. Bear on a romp. Is American secession still a bona fide probability? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Secessionist tendencies are going through the roof all over the world. Okay, so if we think we're somehow immune from secessionist tendencies, think again. So, yes, there was that poll. I can't remember. Was it Gallup? It was a pretty shocking poll. But it did find the majority of Southern Republicans wanted to secede. It found a plurality of independents in the Midwest wanting to secede, and it found a plurality of center-left Democrats in the Pacific Northwest wanting to secede. You, of course, have the county secession movement with about 20 of Oregon's 30 plus counties now ratifying referendums that express that they want to join up with Idaho and leave Antifa infested Portland. And then, of course, you've got Texas, which grows by the year. Dan Miller is doing a great job with Texas, and in terms of communicating the rationale for it, organizing events, and so forth. And even the Republican Party of Texas has put into their platform that they do believe a referendum on secession should be voted on. So absolutely, it's still, and I think the Gallup poll found 40% as a whole of the population wants to secede. Now that's gigantic. That's huge. Like I said, we're probably the most divided nation on the planet right now in many respects, in terms of the people versus the political class. So again, what we have to understand is all of the divisions that are painted for us by the simulacra in the legacy media are all there to paint a picture of a nation divided, and therefore we need a political class to hold us together. I think we are more united than we've ever been. Even the left hates the woke. We're more united than we've ever been, and we're more united against our ruling elite, and that is why they're so panicked. All right. Django Hang, China and Russia still pushing digital ID, vigilancy, social credit systems, and a BRICS, CDBCs. So is a dystopia without wokeness. Well, yeah, yeah. Again, I think you're. Once again, you're looking at this politically and economically, not fundamentally culturally. The backlash to what you just said is you're overstating it dramatically, and you're missing the wider cultural renaissance and civilizational renaissance that's happening over there, and you're mired in Western political thinking that cannot get beyond this freedom versus tyranny mindset. So that would be the pushback against that. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I certainly have no interest in participating in any of those things that you just listed. That's for sure. And I don't think any of us do. And I don't think we will. We won't put up for it. We will not put up with it. Next. Adam, how do heavily regulated industries like butcher shops work around the rules to operate in parallel economy? Great question. Great question, Adam. I don't know. Don't know the answer to that. I'm wondering if that goes into the sanctuary state. It goes into the sanctuary state context. So in red states, you're gonna have more freedom to operate than in blue states, something akin to that. So you're still operating within the confines of state regulations, but the state regulations tend to be those indicative more of our conservative values. Next. Hi, Q. Old school liberals say they are not leftists, yet without them, leftists would not exist. Great point. Hi, Q. Great point. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I understand some people say I'm a classic liberal and so forth. Classic liberals believe in free speech. This is Bill Maher and all that. I get it. I just, for me, again, you have to understand you're going back to old ideological categories that are basically disappearing off the planet right now in terms of the new political order that's rising. It's not so much ideology. I remember ideology is a 19th century French word that was used to replace sacred ideas, that was used to designate sacred ideas that replaced religion. They got rid of their religion. And so what's going to bind us together? Because that's the purpose of religion. Religio means religio is based on the term religare, which means to bind or to tie, rebind or retie. Religion is the glue that holds society together. It's the cult of culture that holds society together. If you don't have religion, what's going to bind society together? And so ideology, liberty and equality. That was the French motto. And of course, they've split into the right and to the left. The right says they're all for liberty, and the left says they're all for equality. So yeah, I mean, we need to be Americans. We need to embrace what makes America distinctively America, and Australian and British or English. You can even go further, as it were, or French or whatever. What makes us a distinct people? That's what's going to flourish in the world that is emerging. Next. Ryan Patrick, love your channel, Dr. Steve. We can come back from this. Keep the faith, friends. Amen, Ryan. There you go. There you go. There you go. We know it's a serious issue, but we never lose hope. Theophrastus, optimism is in the long run is fine, but China's insane communists have been around for 100 years. The long run can be generations. Oh, absolutely. But again, the new geopolitics, the new geopolitics that's forming is not interested in regime change. We're going to have to deal with China the way Japan deals with China. Japan is very clever in how they keep China's power checked. They are very clever, especially with joining things like the Quad or different kinds of organizations or alliances. They're extremely clever in keeping the geopolitical power of China balanced in a way where they feel like they're not threatened. But they have no illusions at regime change with China. They have no illusions of trying to make China more like them. And that's the shit we're going to have to get rid of here, guys. I'm sorry. I see it so much on the right, and I'm sick of it. It's just like I've been on the channel for 6 years now, and I've been doing everything I can to argue, guys, the new world that's rising no longer has America dictating to the rest of the world what kind of politics they can have. Those days are over, guys, because politics is downstream from culture, and culture is ascending, not politics. So anyway, there you go. Theophrastus, love the name as well. Mike Kilo, thank you for the gift. Shout out to you. John, would you agree the impeachment narrative is very similar to the jailed man in Germany who used his imprisonment to rally his way to power in 1933? First, John, I think first I would ask, how do you live with yourself? That's number one. But then secondly, I would also point out, obviously, that you are confusing a modern age with a postmodern age. Modern ages were all about how do we conquer the world, like what woke people are trying to do, like probably what you're trying to do. How do we conquer the world with our warped, sick ideology? The postmodern age is about the breakup of that world. The postmodern age is about the opportunity more and more populations have to piss on that world, to laugh at that world, that it was how utterly fleeting and pathetic, and how many people that world ended up killing. So, no, bye-bye. We enjoy what's left of your woke leftist modern world. We will move on to a postmodern, post-globalist, post-liberal world and look back at the time that you had power as one of the most sickening and inhumane moments in human history. Next, Mitchell Ryan, what do you think of the U.S. going digital currency? They're going to try. That's inevitable. It's part of the logic of globalism, because globalism operates by centralization and standardization, and then increasingly in the network society, digitalization. There's going to be massive backlash against it. There's going to be massive. I don't know. Maybe there's one already, but I don't know of a single Republican who's standing up for it or who's supporting it. So right now here in the U.S., there's going to be massive backlash. It's already happening. It's already happening in China. It's already happening in other places of the world. Right now, it's an opt-in system. It's a voluntary system. So we'll see. The Moral Reform Chronicles. God bless you, my friend. Thank you for that gift. And again, I don't know how many which ones are on YouTube and which one on Rumble, but again, a huge welcome to our Rumble crowd here. GBU, God be with you, my friend. This persecution has just emboldened us. Also, more than 80% of Puerto Ricans are Christian converts. There's a new conservative political party called Proyecto Dignidad. Forgive me for that. So Project Dignity. Yes. No. Amen. Amen to that. No. I'm just using my reference to Puerto Rico was just because of the way the Democrats were thinking they could use it to their own advantage. I was converted to Christianity through a fellow born and raised in Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico is near and dear to my eternal heart. So God bless you. Absolutely. Next. Thanks, H2O. Thanks for the gift. Django Hang Leller, I regret my last super chat after your explanation. Well, thank you. Thank you, Django. Thank you. And again, forgive me, there is the frustration is internal. It's me. I expect myself to be able to communicate well. And then I feel like if I've communicated well, and then the response is, all right, I get what you're saying, but I don't buy it. No problem. No problem. We're hearing each other. We're all, we're all discussing things at different, yeah, no problem. So when you gave that response, I felt like, man, it just, I'm not communicating. It's not coming through. So thank you. That's very sweet of you for saying that. That's very, very kind of you. And again, I think people have to get, when we say a new conservative age is rising, I remember, and I've been doing this from day one, I define conservative in traditionalist, civilizationalist terms, right? So that I bring together a Hindu conservative with a Texan conservative, right? A Russian conservative with a Brazilian conservative. Okay, we're defining conservative in very broad brush terms, not as libertarian. We're not defining it in economic terms. We're not defining it in political terms. We're defining it in very much cultural, civilizational, traditionalist terms that are very religious in nature, which spells good news for those of us who want to see an end to this secular, liberal, globalist tyranny. So that's right. But the conservative world is going to have its own problems. And for me, we have plenty of time to beat up on China. We have plenty of time to beat up on Russia. We got plenty of time to beat up on Iran. We got plenty of time to beat up on nations we think are acting immorally. We got plenty of time for that. But right now, we need to take down the globalists. Stop thinking that Putin is your enemy. Your enemy is in the White House right now. I mean, Donald Trump has said it himself. What I just said is nothing that Donald Trump has not said, right? We need regime change here in the United States. When asked, do we need regime change in Russia? We need regime change here. These guys are used by the permanent political class to deflect our resentment away from them onto somebody else. And by the way, politicians have been doing that since the ancient Greeks, since the Carthaginians, all right, since the Romans. It's always, you find the fault, you pin resentment on a foreign enemy, as it were. You always need some other enemy other than the political class, because every member of the political class knows what can happen when mass resentment is focused on them. Just ask Marie Antoinette. All right, what do we got? We have more. You're a cool cucumber. Keep on keeping on. Hyperborean baby. I love you, man. Thank you. Weatherhelm, you speak my mind. Thanks for keeping me sane. Rock on, Steve. Thanks, Weatherhelm. God bless you, bro. Thanks for all these gifts, guys. The Moral Reform Chronicles. Hi, Dr. Steve. Good morning. I'm curious, how will the de-dollarization affect the economy? And what about the price of daily essentials? Will this affect us for 2 generations because of our debt? Yeah, so more and more studies are starting to come in on that because de-dollarization is happening so fast. Again, we predicted this. We predicted this was going to happen right when those sanctions got launched in March of last year. We're like, you're weaponizing the dollar. People are going to push back. Russia and China are going to line up together. You're doing what Henry Kissinger said you were never supposed to do if you want to maintain American hegemony in the world. You're bringing the greatest commodity power and the greatest manufacturing and financial power together, married into one block. You do that, we're shot. There's no way we can compete with it. And then you bring India into that, playing us off of each other. Forget about it. So de-dollarization's happening very fast. I think just before this broadcast, I'm trying to put the chronology in my head. Yeah, this morning I came across BRICS. Now the BRICS nations are announcing they are currently trying to put together. They are now formally trying to put together a parallel currency. We're already seeing it with France and China and the yuan, Saudi Arabia and China, Brazil and China. It's already happening. Now, the good news, apparent from what I have read, this is going to take time. This is not something you could just do overnight. This is going to take time, years. Okay. So So one estimate I read said we're probably not going to see anything noticeably happening to the dollar as the global reserve, probably for the next decade to 2 decades. Okay, so we're talking a generation here. But now, when it happens, what will happen? Well, the debt is going to, as you said, the debt is going to come back and bite us in the ass like we never even imagined. The debt is because we live off the debt. We live off of other nations buying our bonds. They don't want to convert their dollars that they use in petro or in trade. They don't want to convert them into their own currency because you always end up losing stuff. So they just end up dumping it into bonds. So we can live off of $30 trillion of other nations basically owning us. But the moment the dollar comes, the end of the dollar comes calling, the moment they all make a run on their bonds, we're shot. There's no way we can pay it. So what's going to be the effect of that? We'll have to see. Obviously, inflation, most likely the devaluation of the dollar, dramatic. Hopefully, we will be prepared. Hopefully, the leaders that we elect over the next 10 years, it may take another 5 or 5, 6, 7, but over the next 10 years, around 2030, 2035, hopefully they will see this new world rising. They will see the old globalist world and its rules are over. Its protocols are over. Its standards of evaluation are over. And a new world is rising, and we're going to have to get up with that world. And hopefully we can adjust. But I think it'll roller coaster when countries see us adjusting to a de-dollarizing future. It'll just spiral. They'll say, oh, okay, well, I might as well get out of the dollar. So there you go. That's the best I could say right now with it. UP Shoot, do you think you could also do a live Bible study on your channel every once in a while? If you are interested in doing that, let me know, guys. We can. I would be absolutely. I taught theology for 18 years, so I'd be happy to do it. Geopolitical theology. Very good. Next. Dark Galaxy, when Trump is reelected in 2024, do you think he will be able to turn us into an industrial powerhouse like we were in World War II? Definitely. I mean, we were already there. We were already, unemployment in manufacturing was the lowest. I believe it was the lowest ever. There were 2 indicators that were huge: Black unemployment levels and manufacturing unemployment levels. I think it was the Black unemployment levels were the lowest ever, and manufacturing unemployment levels were one of the lowest we've seen certainly since World War II. So absolutely. I mean, I think that would be because that's his base. The MAGA base is the rural industrial Rust Belt demographic. Next. Harry at New Mexico. Good morning, Dr. Steve from Alamogordo, New Mexico. Curious if you saw that President Bukele, I'm reading it wrong. Thank you. President Bukele of El Salvador posted his Twitter page, is blasting what they're doing to Trump. He's a huge Trump supporter. Bukele is now that Bolsonaro is gone. Yeah, Bukele is my favorite Latin American president. He is unbelievable. He is unbelievable. What he is doing in El Salvador, just decimating the crime rates, is amazing. He's been on Tucker several times. He's young. He's charismatic. Keep your eye on him. Well, hopefully the establishment doesn't come after him. He's amazing. Yeah, President Bukele of El Salvador, absolutely wonderful, wonderful patriot. Again, a future leader. That's the kind of leaders we're going to see in the future. How many more we got there, John? We got more. Nick Johnson, you guys are awesome. Thank you for all these. Nick Johnson, the wokists remind me of Acclaim Entertainment, which started losing money in the early 2000s. They tried insane PR stunts, and it only made them a joke. Yeah, kind of like jumping the shark, right? Yeah, I mean, wokeness entails the seeds of its own demise. Wokeness is insane. Again, as we found out this week, how much damage can they inflict while they're around? But they'll die. I mean, even the left hates the woke. They despise it. What else we got? Rodney Full Circle. What good books can I listen to for accurate American history on Audible? Working 80 hours a week limits my study time, so I listen as I drive. Awesome. Oh, Rodney, My wife would actually be the one to ask. She loves and my son, my youngest son, do American history. What's his name? I do have Larry. You guys probably know it. Put it in the chat if you know it. Is it Larry? I think it's Larry Schweikert. Schweikert. Larry has an amazing. I have not listened to it, but everyone I respect who has loves it. Larry Schweikert has an awesome American history course that you can listen to while you're driving, as I understand it. And he's a patriot, bar none. So why don't you try that? I'm American history. Ironically, I'm not great at in terms of my technical knowledge. So I'm nervous recommending anything from me because I don't have a lot. So, what do you got more? Josh? Hyperborean, baby. I hope I'm saying that right. Or is it Hyperborean? I was reading an economics book by Alan Blinker. And it says Republicans since Reagan times, including Trump, focus on tax cuts, which increases our deficit. What do you say? Well, the theory is that tax cuts spur economic activity, and the spurred economic activity grows the tax base because there's more to tax. That's the argument. So you have to examine it yourself. Again, I tend to be relatively agnostic on as you guys can see, as I'm trying to push on political nuance. I'm much more interested in the culture, and I get any tax structure that hurts culture, that hurts vibrancy of culture, that hurts our demographics, hurts our churches, our growing communities, families, and so forth, is bad. I don't care how much economic theory is behind it. That's where I tend to come from. Next, Peggy. Thank you so much for the gift, Peggy. God bless you. Django, but aren't you concerned? Django, you keep coming back, man. Come on, leave me alone. But aren't you concerned China in the future can use their financial power to use the same sanctions NATO used to push one group of ideas and censor others? Absolutely. A new conservative age is going to have its own problems. No question. And that's why China is going to have to be contained to a certain extent. I absolutely agree with it. Russia is going to be nervous about how big China is getting. India is already nervous about how big China is getting, especially because China gets all of its oil. Well, not all now with their deal with Russia, but most of its oil from the Middle East and from the Persian Gulf. And so India is very nervous about this massive blue navy that's being built in order to not only better bring more oil, but also to defend that oil. Japan, Australia. So there's enough nations out there to be able to push back on China. And if China starts weaponizing the yuan, then you're going to see the same thing happen here, where we're going to have an alternative currency among like Quad nations that you're seeing today develop. What my biggest problem is the notion that we contain China by regime change. Those days, the John Bolton, Victoria Nuland geopolitics is over. They are over. Stop thinking China's going to change. It's not. China's not going to, Russia's not going to change. India's not change. They are going to be nationalist, populist, civilizationalist for the foreseeable future. Stop thinking they're going to change them. What you do is you learn how to live around them, right? And then create alliances, mutually beneficial alliances, bilateral alliances, so as to contain them, right? That's what Japan has been doing now for thousands of years. They have no interest in changing the regime. I mean, outside of invasions and stuff like that, but those days are over in many respects. Outside of cultural spheres, Taiwan and Ukraine included. Chris H., why hasn't anyone investigated the head of the snake, George Soros, and his massive campaign interference using millions to get socialist puppets elected? I think you partly answered the question, because he has so many puppets in DC. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think this is where the Republicans show themselves to be such feckless morons. so weak. The left has no problem turning people on the right into boogeymen, but the leaders on the left, but our leaders on the right are scared to death of doing it, unless they be called anti-Semitic or racist or bigoted and so forth. That's the world we're living in now with Herbert Marcuse's conception of repressive tolerance. Marcuse was arguing on the college campuses back in the 50s and 60s that the old secular notion of tolerance no longer worked. We needed a tolerance that tolerated everything leftist and became radically intolerant of everything conservative, everything traditionalist. And so Soros, of course, is Herbert Marcuse on steroids with massive billions at his disposal. Collapsing the Bank of England in the process of achieving those billions, of course. And he's paid off everybody to very much like what is it? Not the ACLU, what is SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center. The way they've used grievance politics and race politics to blacklist all of these conservative organizations they don't like. If they don't like you, they zero in on you as an enemy of destruction. Now, again, in a classical liberal society, if I didn't like you, I knew in a democratic society I need to tolerate you. I may not like you, I may not like what you say, but I'll die for your right to say it. That kind of stuff. That's gone. That's gone. Repressive tolerance now dictates if I don't like you, if I'm on the left and I don't like you, I got to get rid of you. And so Soros has amassed leaders on the left who play by those rules, and the leaders on the right are always playing catch up. They're always playing catch up to it. They're always like, okay, well, now what do we do? They don't like us. Now what do we do? They're trying to get rid of us. Now what do we do? And that's what made Trump so dangerous. He never played catch up. He redefined the rules of the game. He redefined the rules. And he redefined the rules in such a way that gave more people who have been disaffected in politics for decades hope. Finally, somebody saying what I've been saying for years and have broken through the establishment restraints in terms of our discourse. So the Republicans are just going to have to become a Trumpian party. And if they become a Trumpian party, which is what Trump tried to do, he's a third-party candidate that took over a main party, an establishment party nomination. But the rest of the party has yet to catch up because the donor class also, Chris, doesn't like this. The donor, as you know, the donor class, again, going back to the Soros thesis, the donor class tends to try to keep, they allow the Democrats to push repressive tolerance because that's just been accepted, particularly through the legacy media. Remember, if you have a transgender shooter, maybe you should have had better laws, gun laws and laws that don't harm transgender care, kind of get what you deserve kind of thing. You've got the donors who are fine with that, but then the donors on the right don't like Republicans playing in kind. They don't like the politics of retribution. So there's going to be enormous pressure for the Republicans not to respond. So I think that's the context of why Soros gets away with all this nonsense. But in a politics of retribution, a Trumpian retribution, I think Soros's days are, the guy's 150 years old at this point. So, but guys like him, I don't think are going to be around much longer. They won't be allowed. All right, guys, how we doing? We got more? Is that it? Boldly stand for truth by getting your own Trump shirt. Yes. Awesome. I'll be back, gang. We're going to rock and roll this. It is a very serious time, very scary for our country. No question. We're not the same nation as we were yesterday morning. We've crossed a Rubicon, no question. But I think the good news is the rebirth that we're going to have to go through now will not include the Democrats, not at least the way they're constituted at the moment. They can never, ever, ever again be trusted with power. So this is going to take a while. It's going to be rough. It's going to have its ups and its downs. But like I said, remember that we are more united today than ever before against the ruling class. They're scared of us, and that's why they're doing this. Love you guys. God bless. We'll see you.